If someone had asked me what love looked like when I was 22, I would have said it was compromise, partnership, fighting for one another. I would have pointed at Michael Green and said, "That's the man I'll grow old with." He wasn't rich. He wasn't flashy. But he was driven, focused. When we met in our final year of college, I thought he was the most grounded person I'd ever known. He used to study late in the library, take on extra shifts to cover tuition, and talk about building a life from scratch. I admired that. We weren't some fairy tale couple. We had our struggles. But through every late-night meal, every shared dream, I believed we were building something real. And when he proposed, modestly, with a trembling voice and hands still, covered in engine grease from his part-time job, I said yes without hesitation. We got married in a small ceremony outside of Santa Cruz. My parents paid for most of it. Chloe, my best friend since high school, handled the planning. She even slipped us a check for $3,000 the night before the wedding, saying, "You'll need this more than I do." It wasn't about the money. It was her way of saying, "I believe in you both." When Michael got the job in Seattle, thanks to Chloe's referral, we celebrated like we'd just won the lottery. I remember the joy in his eyes when he got the call. I was proud of him. We moved, started fresh. I landed a marketing job at a boutique firm. He started working at a tech support company with benefits and a decent salary. Everything felt like it was finally aligning, and then Helen moved in. Michael said it would be temporary. His mother had some loneliness issues after his father passed. He told me she just needed to feel useful again, especially with the baby on the way. At the time, I was 5 months pregnant, vulnerable, emotional, and still believing the best in people. Helen arrived with a suitcase and an arsenal of opinions. About how we kept the kitchen, about how much we spent on groceries, about how we split our finances. It began with little comments. "Emma, you let the water run too long." Or, "Michael always liked his socks folded a certain way." But the tension escalated when we were discussing Chloe's upcoming wedding. We were in our bedroom. I had just gotten out of the shower and was rubbing cocoa butter into my growing belly. Michael was scrolling through something on his phone. "What are you thinking? Of giving Chloe for the wedding?" he asked, like it was just another errand to check off. "I'm thinking $1,000. And maybe a custom necklace. Something she'll love." He blinked. "That's a lot, Emma. Don't you think that's overdoing it?" I paused. "She gave us $3,000 when we got married. She's the reason you have your job. And I can't attend the ceremony because of the pregnancy. I want her to feel loved." "Still," he said, "it feels excessive. It's just a gift." "To you, maybe," I said, "but to me, it's a thank you." That's when Helen appeared at the door like a ghost. $1,000 for a wedding? Are you insane? My hands froze mid-motion. I hadn't heard her coming. "Were you listening outside our door again?" "I was walking by," she said too quickly. "Your voices carry." She stepped inside, arms crossed. "I don't know what's wrong with your generation. Living like celebrities, on average salaries. When we got married, a $100 check was considered generous." I turned to Michael, expecting, hoping for him to say something. Anything. He didn't. He just stared down at his phone. Helen, emboldened by his silence, continued. "Honestly, Michael wouldn't have to work so hard if you knew how to budget. If you stopped wasting money on fancy lotions and overpriced gifts." "Excuse me?" I said. "If you two had any discipline, you'd have saved a couple $100,000 by now. But no. You blow every cent on parties, gifts, and God knows what else." I felt my stomach tighten. Not from the baby, but from the sheer audacity. "You know what our mortgage is? It's nearly $4,000 a month, and I pay half. Michael doesn't pay for everything." Helen scoffed. "Then maybe it's time you two split everything properly. 50-50, rent, bills, food, that's what modern couples do, right? Keep things clean. And just like that, the truth I had been avoiding for months was laid bare. Michael had said nothing, not one word in my defense, because this wasn't Helen's idea. It was his. He wanted a marriage built on ledgers, not loyalty. I looked him straight in the eye. Is that what you want too? To split everything down the middle now? He coughed. I mean, it just makes things easier. Less confusion. Even now, with me pregnant? He didn't answer. And that silence, that pathetic silence, was louder than any scream. That night, I lay in bed, wide awake, replaying the last few months, the whispered side comments from Helen, the passive-aggressive remarks about what was fair, the sudden spreadsheets Michael had started keeping, the way he had stopped offering, stopped sharing, stopped trying. I remembered when we first met, how he used to save his tips just to buy me coffee during finals week, how he'd take the long way home just to see me for 5 extra minutes. I thought he was kind. I thought he was safe. But somewhere along the way, Michael had stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as an expense. And I had stopped recognizing the man I married. Before I continue, if this story has stirred something in you, if you're angry, heartbroken, or just shocked, please consider subscribing. Your support is what allows us to tell more stories like this. Stories that reflect the uncomfortable, painful truths too many people are afraid to say out loud. Now let me ask you something. If your partner asked to split everything equally, even during your pregnancy, what would you do? A, agree for the sake of peace and try to make it work. B, question if the relationship is still built on love. Drop your answer in the comments, A or B. I want to know how you'd handle it. Because as you'll soon find out, this story is just getting started, and what comes next, no one saw coming. After that night, the night Helen suggested splitting every expense and Michael didn't argue, I started seeing everything differently. It was as if someone had ripped off a blindfold I'd been wearing for years. Nothing had changed, but everything had become clear. There's a silence that follows betrayal. A stillness so thick you can hear your own doubts echoing off the walls. That's where I lived now, in the space between my disappointment and my disbelief. What does it mean when the person you've built your life with starts acting like your roommate? Not just sharing a home, but itemizing it. Every meal, every minute of the water running, every trip to the store. What kind of love has to be tracked to the decimal? The first time Helen asked me for exact change, I thought it was a joke. I picked up groceries this morning, $52 total. Your half is $26. You can just leave the cash on the counter. She smiled as if she were offering a generous favor. I won't charge for my cooking. We're family. I laughed at first, genuinely stunned. We're a household of 3, I said. Shouldn't it be around $17 each? Nah, blinked, completely serious. Michael doesn't count. I've cooked for him his whole life. I've never charged him. Why would I start now? There was something chilling in her logic. Something that made me realize this wasn't just her doing. It was baked into how she viewed family. Michael was her son, her responsibility. I was the outsider, the burden. And they both thought I should pay for the privilege. After that, things moved quickly. The fridge became a map of territories. My name written on cartons, eggs, leftovers. It didn't stop there. I found spreadsheets printed and left on the kitchen counter with the dates of every bill we'd paid, notes in the margins calculating usage. A few times I noticed Helen timing my showers. I thought I was being paranoid, until she brought it up one night over dinner. You might want to keep your showers shorter, Emma, she said casually. Last month's water bill was unusually high. Michael just kept eating, like nothing was wrong. The air in our home shifted. It was no longer warm or safe. It was clinical. A business agreement wrapped in the thin veil of domesticity. I couldn't tell which was worse, Helen's open hostility or Michael's indifference. One evening I came home from work exhausted, my back aching, belly heavy. Michael wasn't back yet. Helen had cooked. Grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, and steamed vegetables. It smelled wonderful. My stomach growled as I entered the kitchen. "Dinner's ready," she said, not looking up from the table. "Your portions." "In the microwave." I sat down slowly, grateful for a hot meal. "That'll be $12, she added, still not looking at me. I froze. "I didn't ask you to cook." She finally looked up. "Well, I didn't make it for free. Take it or leave it." I pushed the plate away and went to bed hungry. When I told Michael about it later, he said, "She's just trying to make things fair. She's old-fashioned." Fair. That word again. They used it like a shield, like it could justify anything. It got to the point where I couldn't open a cabinet without seeing a note or a label. My coffee, my cereal, my soap, even my prenatal vitamins had been moved to a separate shelf. And through all of this, Michael kept pretending everything was normal. He still kissed me on the cheek in the mornings, still texted me little updates during the day. But when it came time to pay the bills or pick up groceries, he sent me requests like we were splitting dinner after a first date. I remember one night vividly. I had a cold. Not a terrible one, but enough to leave me dizzy and sore. And when you're pregnant, you can't just take medicine. I needed to see a doctor. I called Michael from work. He came to pick me up, drove me to urgent care, sat beside me in the waiting room. He even held my hand. For a brief moment, I felt cared for again. Maybe he did still love me. Maybe he was just lost. We drove home in silence, the kind of quiet that feels like a held breath. I was about to thank him when he spoke. "I took half a day off," he said. "That's about $95 in lost pay, plus gas, and the copay. So maybe just Venmo me like $200 to cover everything?" My mouth went dry. I stared straight ahead. He wasn't joking. That night, I cried in the shower. I cried so hard I forgot what silence felt like. Every part of me wanted to scream, but I didn't. I went to our room, opened my phone, and transferred the money. He thanked me with a smile. $200 for being my husband. For showing up. After that, something inside me started to shut down. Not in anger, in protection. I stopped telling him how I felt. I stopped hoping he'd change. I stopped pretending that love would fix this. I began to move through the house, like a ghost, showing up for work, checking off the boxes, surviving. Even Chloe noticed the difference. She called one afternoon while I was out walking, trying to ease the tension in my lower back. "You sound distant," she said. "I'm just tired." "Is he helping?" I paused. "Helping what?" "Everything. The house. You. The baby." I didn't answer, because I didn't know what help felt like anymore. I started spending more weekends at my parents' house. Just a night or two. My mom would cook. My dad would ask me how work was. They didn't pry, but I knew they were worried. One night I stayed late, and my mom tucked a blanket around me on the couch. She looked at me and said softly, "You know, baby, love doesn't make you prove your worth. Real love makes you feel safe." That stayed with me. I went home the next morning. Helen greeted me with a bill for the groceries they'd bought while I was gone. "We didn't eat all of it," she said, "but since you'll be using some, this is your portion." I took the paper, folded it, didn't say a word. When Michael came home, I asked him, "Do you think this is normal?" He looked confused. What? Your mom charging me for groceries, timing my showers. You charging me for a doctor's visit. He sighed. Emma, we agreed to keep things equal. It's not personal. It's just about boundaries. Boundaries? I repeated. It's cleaner this way. That night, I stared at the ceiling until morning. Something had died between us, but neither of us was willing to bury it. And the most painful part? I was starting to feel relief in the silence. It meant we weren't pretending anymore. But I didn't know, yet, that the worst was still ahead. That even in labor, I would be asked to prove I was worth the price of pain relief. That the final straw wouldn't be loud or dramatic. It would be quiet, cold, just like the love that used to live in our home. Labor has a way of stripping you bare, not just physically, but emotionally. It peels back all the layers of pretense, all the reasons and excuses you've told yourself to keep going. In that sterile hospital room, between the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the stabbing waves of contraction, I realized I had spent too long clinging to a marriage that had already let go of me. The early signs of labor came on. A rainy Thursday morning in Seattle, I woke up feeling strange, heavy in a different way. My body told me what the doctors hadn't. It was time. My parents picked me up and drove me to the hospital. Michael and Helen met us there. He didn't say much, just a nod. Helen carried a grocery bag full of snacks for herself. As they wheeled me into the labor room and hooked me to monitors, the pain began to build, slow but steady. A nurse checked and said I was only 3 centimeters dilated. You've got a long way to go, she said gently. Would you like to consider an epidural? I didn't hesitate. Yes, please. Your husband needs to sign the consent form. We'll bring it to him. They left. I waited. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The contractions became unbearable. I was drenched in sweat, gripping the side of the bed, gasping for air. My mother stepped out to find someone, anyone, to get things moving. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Michael. Hey, he said casually, like we were catching up after lunch. The nurse said you're asking for the epidural? I'm in pain, Michael, I choked. I need it, he sighed. It's almost $2,000. And the doctor said you can do this naturally. My mom did. Millions of women do. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was in labor. I was about to bring his child into the world, and he was asking me to endure agony to save money. I'm not asking for a vacation, I hissed. I'm asking for help. Well, he said, his voice firm now. If you want it, you'll have to pay for it. I'm not signing off on that expense. It's not a shared cost. I dropped the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went quiet. The kind of quiet that only comes after something breaks. The nurse returned. We still don't have a signature. Can I sign for myself? She hesitated. Under these conditions, yes. Are you sure? Yes. She brought the form. My hands trembled as I signed, not from fear or pain, but from the cold clarity flooding through me. I had never felt more alone. 6 hours later, my daughter entered the world, pink and screaming. Healthy. Perfect. A miracle. They placed her on my chest. And in that moment, I knew, whatever storm I was about to walk through, she was worth it. When they wheeled me into recovery, Michael and Helen were waiting. He looked tired. She looked impatient. It's a girl? Helen asked, frowning. My mother answered before I could. Yes, and she's perfect. Helen sighed. Such a shame. Boys are easier, Girls are a lot. Guess you'll have to try again, Michael grunted. We'll need to save up. Another kid would be expensive. My father clenched his fists. My mother's face went white. But I spoke before they could. I want a divorce. Michael blinked. What? You heard me. Emma, you just had a baby. Exactly. And I'd rather raise her alone than have her grow up thinking this is what love looks like. Helen gasped. You're being emotional. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more. Michael took a step forward. Let's talk when you're calmer. No, I said. We've been talking for years. I've begged for understanding. I've asked for compassion. And you gave me itemized bills. My mother walked over and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. We're taking her home, she said. This conversation is over. That evening, in the quiet of the postpartum care center, I watched my daughter sleep beside me. Her fingers curled into tiny fists, her breath shallow and soft. I thought about the past year, the way I had tried to make excuses for Michael's behavior, how I had convinced myself that love was supposed to hurt sometimes, that marriages went through phases, that he just needed time. But labor doesn't lie. When the pain comes, when your body is torn open and you're pleading for someone to stand by you, the people who show up are the ones who love you. Michael showed me exactly who he was. A man who watched me suffer and chose to protect his wallet. A man who looked at his newborn daughter and saw not joy, but cost. In the days that followed, I began filing for divorce. Chloe referred me to a strong, experienced attorney. I kept everything quiet. No outbursts, no shouting matches, just documents and deadlines. And yet, Michael still managed to surprise me. He refused to sign the papers. Instead, he sent me a spreadsheet. $12,300. That was the total he claimed I owed him. For what? Expenses he said he had covered during my pregnancy. Gas, insurance, time off work, a few co-pays. Since I won't be part of the baby's life, his email said. You should reimburse my half. I stared at the message, nauseated. Not from hormones or fatigue, but from the realization that I had once believed this man would protect me. I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. Michael called that night. I let it ring. Then Helen called. She left a voicemail. You're going to regret this. No man will ever love you like Michael did. You'll end up alone. And that child will grow up without a real father. I deleted it. My daughter stirred in her crib. I picked her up, held her against my chest, and whispered, You already have everything you need. Love isn't measured by sacrifice. It's revealed in moments of choice. Michael had his chance, and he chose himself every single time. After Michael refused to sign the divorce papers and sent me a spreadsheet of all the so-called expenses he believed I owed him for carrying his child, I realized the war hadn't ended in the hospital. It had only just begun. But I wasn't afraid. I was done mourning the marriage. Now I was focused on protecting what mattered, my daughter and the dignity I had left. I showed everything to my attorney. She didn't blink. Let him keep sending spreadsheets, she said. We'll keep building a case. But Michael wasn't content with silence. Days later, he uploaded a video to social media, one that he clearly hoped would shift public opinion in his favor. It showed Helen sobbing on their couch, claiming that I was abandoning the family in their time of need, that she was sick, terminal even, and that I had refused to contribute to her treatment. She said I was selfish, heartless, and materialistic. Michael sat beside her, holding her hand like a grieving son. In the video, he told viewers he was willing to forgive me if I apologized and came back, that he missed his daughter, that families should stay together. It went viral within hours. I woke up to hundreds of comments calling me a gold digger, a bad mother, a cruel wife. People tagged my workplace. Some sent threats. My company placed me on an extended leave of absence until the situation settled. My parents were furious, but I was quiet, because I had expected this. The night Michael visited me at the postpartum center and demanded I pay him back, I had pressed record on my phone. I had captured every word, every accusation, every dollar amount. Even the moment he threatened to make the divorce difficult unless I paid him. I had screenshots of his messages, photos of the spreadsheets, voice messages from Helen demanding money, everything. So I made a choice. If they wanted to drag my name through the mud in public, I would bring the truth into the light. With Chloe's help, I hired a digital media consultant, someone who knew how to manage PR and navigate the storm Michael had started. We carefully prepared a video of our own, no theatrics, just the facts. We began with the audio from the postpartum center, the moment he asked for money for gas, time off, and medical bills. We included screenshots of his messages, where he threatened to withhold divorce unless I paid him. We showed Helen's text messages tallying up grocery costs, and then we dropped the real bomb. A video statement from the nurse who had been with me during labor. She looked straight into the camera and said, "I was there when Emma was in active labor. Her husband refused to sign the consent form for pain medication. She was sobbing, in agony. I had to ask her if she wanted to sign for herself. She did. Alone." By the end of the video, no one was questioning who the villain was. The shift was fast. Public sentiment swung like a pendulum. Suddenly, the same people who had cursed me were now apologizing in the comments. News outlets picked up the story. A popular podcast did a segment on it. The woman who was charged for giving birth, Michael, went silent. Helen deleted her social media accounts. For the first time in months, I breathed. And then Helen made a mistake. She sent me a photo. A blurry but well-angled image of Michael with another woman, a pretty brunette half his age. They were standing outside a cafe, laughing. The caption read, "Michael's moved on. She's everything you're not." Along with the image, she sent an audio message. "She's already met us. She's the kind of daughter-in-law we always wanted. Sweet, quiet, not controlling. And you? You'll regret losing him." She thought it was a jab, but to me, it was a gift. I forwarded the image and the message to my lawyer. The timing was perfect. The divorce had not been finalized. Infidelity, especially during the legal process, meant leverage. We filed immediately. Full custody, financial control of the home, compensation for emotional damages, and because the photo came from Helen, there was no dispute about its authenticity. Michael tried to deny it, but the judge didn't buy it. He grew angry, defensive. His composure cracked under pressure. I sat across from him in court, holding my daughter, calm and unmoved. The man I had once trusted looked small now, petty, broken. The judge granted my full request. Michael was ordered to vacate the property. I would keep the home. He would pay legal fees. No visitation until he completed a parenting class and underwent counseling. Helen stood outside the courthouse screaming that the system was rigged, that I had manipulated the judge, that no woman should be allowed to destroy a man like this. I walked past her with my daughter in my arms, without a word. The next day, I returned home. Not the home I had shared with Michael and Helen, but the home that now belonged to me and my child. I changed the locks, donated everything that held their energy. I painted the nursery a new color, soft lavender, instead of pale yellow. I opened the windows. I let the light in. Chloe brought over food and wine and sat with me while the baby slept. "You didn't just survive," she said. "You rebuilt." I smiled. Not yet. But I'm learning. Helen tried to contact me again, this time from a different number. She begged for forgiveness, told me she was sick after all, that she needed money. I didn't respond. And Michael? He lost his job. The company didn't want to be associated with the scandal. He tried to sue them. It didn't go well. The man who once put a price on my labor, my pain, and my motherhood now couldn't afford his own rent. People talk about karma like it's a myth, like it's something you hope for but never really see. But I saw it. I watched it unfold in real time. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't cheer. I just closed the door, because revenge was never my goal. Freedom was. And now, finally, I had it. The knock came on a Tuesday morning. I was folding tiny clothes in the nursery, the sunlight pouring in through the windows like warmth I hadn't felt in years. My daughter, barely 6 months old, was babbling to herself in her crib. The rhythm of our new life had finally settled, slow and gentle, like waves washing over a once broken shore. I opened the door to find Michael on his knees. He looked thinner, as if life had worn him down and fast forward. His clothes hung on him, wrinkled and oversized. His eyes were red. His voice shook. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "Emma, please, I want to come home." Behind him stood Helen, her mouth tight, arms folded. She didn't speak, but her expression said everything. She blamed me for his downfall. I didn't invite them in. "Why are you here?" I asked. "I have nothing left," Michael said. "I lost the job. My lease is up. I just want to see my daughter." My daughter. Not our daughter. I didn't say that aloud. "You think showing up now erases what you did?" I asked. "You refused to sign for pain relief while I was in labor. You tried to extort money from me for giving birth. You went online and turned the world against me." He looked down. "I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking about money. That's the only thing you ever thought about." Helen stepped forward. "Are you really going to keep a father from his child?" "No," I said. "But I'll protect her from a man who treated her mother like a transaction." Michael's voice broke. "I can be better. I will be. Just give me a chance." I took a deep breath. The old me might have wavered, but I wasn't her anymore. "You don't get to come back because you lost everything," I said. "You don't get to rebuild your life on the ashes of mine. You were given every chance, Michael. You chose yourself every time." Helen scoffed. "We should have known better than to trust someone like you." I smiled, calm. "And I should have known better than to ignore the red flags." I stepped back and began to close the door. Michael's eyes were desperate now. "Please, just let me see her." I paused. "Get a lawyer, file for visitation, follow the court's rules, do the work." He opened his mouth, but I had already shut the door. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I held my daughter in my arms and kissed her forehead. She reached for my face, innocent and trusting. In the months that followed, there were rumors that Michael had tried to rebuild with someone new and failed, that Helen's health had genuinely declined, and no one was there to care for her, that he had been seen at job interviews with a folder of resumes and a look of desperation. But I stopped. Watching, I had spent too long tied to his orbit. Now, I had my own gravity to follow. I officially changed my daughter's last name to mine. I made sure all legal ties to Michael's family were severed. My attorney handled it with quiet efficiency. I enrolled in a support group for single mothers, not because I was struggling, but because I wanted to sit among women who understood what it meant to rebuild. Women who had left marriages built on performance instead of partnership. We shared stories, not of victims, but of warriors. I returned to work. My company, having seen the truth, welcomed me back. With Chloe's help, I even launched a new campaign focused on financial abuse, because that's what it had been, even if I hadn't known what to call it then. We told stories of women whose partners weaponized money, independence, and tradition. We exposed the ways control can dress itself up as fairness. It went viral. I was asked to speak. I said yes. I told my story. Not to shame him, not for pity, but because women needed to know, you're not crazy. You're not selfish. You're not wrong for wanting love that doesn't itemize affection. And the message landed. One night, months later, I got a call from the nurse who had been with me the day I gave birth. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "Your story helped one of my patients leave a terrible situation. She said she saw herself in you." That's when I cried. Not for what I'd lost, but for what had grown from it. Pain is a strange thing. It carves into you, hollowing you out. But if you let it, that space becomes something new. Something sacred. A place for truth. A place for healing. A place for a future that doesn't begin with compromise. One day, my daughter will ask about her father. She'll want to know what happened. I'll tell her the truth. I'll tell her he wasn't ready. That some people confuse love with ownership. That choosing to walk away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And I'll tell her she was the reason. I chose better. For myself. For her. For the kind of legacy I wanted her to inherit. Not one of resentment, but of strength. Michael never did come back with a lawyer. He disappeared, fading from view like a man who'd never truly been present in the first place. Helen moved to live with distant relatives. I never heard from them again. And that, I realized, was the greatest piece of all. No confrontation. No revenge. Just silence. In the end, Michael taught me one valuable lesson. There are things in life more costly than money. Respect, trust, dignity. Once those are gone, no amount of accounting can bring them back. Love isn't about splitting bills. It's about sharing burdens. And when someone makes you carry everything alone while pretending it's fair, walk away, not because you lost, but because you finally understood your worth. Emma Green's story isn't just a tale of betrayal or the unraveling of a marriage. It's a haunting portrait of what happens when love becomes conditional, when support turns into scrutiny, and when a relationship built on mutual dreams slowly morphs into a contract of obligations. At first glance, it may seem like the problem was money, but beneath every transaction, every Venmo request, every dollar calculated, lay something far more damaging: the erosion of emotional connection. Emma married Michael believing in their shared future, their resilience, and their love. She supported him through grad school. She downplayed her own success to protect his pride. She stepped into marriage and motherhood expecting partnership, but instead found herself carrying both roles, emotionally, financially, and spiritually, on her own. As Helen moved in and began enforcing a twisted version of fairness, the cracks in the foundation deepened. The issue was never about splitting bills or counting groceries. It was about the dehumanizing effect of reducing care, affection, and commitment to ledger entries. Emma wasn't being offered respect. She was being audited. Her labor, both physical and emotional, was being priced and taxed as though she were an employee, not a wife. By the time she was in the delivery room, begging for an epidural while her husband declined to sign off to save money, the truth could no longer be denied. This wasn't love. It was indifference disguised as logic. And that moment, naked, in pain, and completely alone, became the catalyst for her liberation. But her story didn't end with childbirth. It continued through a custody battle, public shaming, and attempts at manipulation. Michael and Helen, tried to paint Emma as selfish, heartless, and gold-digging, when all she had ever wanted was partnership and peace. They underestimated her strength. They thought the shame would silence her. Instead, she fought back, with receipts of her own, with truth, with clarity. What followed was not just a legal victory, but a spiritual one. Emma reclaimed her home, her voice, and her narrative. She changed her daughter's last name, joined a community of other survivors, and turned her pain into purpose by advocating for women facing financial abuse, a type of control rarely talked about, but deeply damaging. In the end, Michael lost everything, not because Emma destroyed him, but because he never truly built anything real to begin with. And Emma? She rebuilt a life on her terms, for herself and for the child she brought into the world against all odds. So, what is the lesson we can take from Emma's story? The most dangerous form of control is the one that wears the mask of fairness. When someone makes you believe that you must earn basic respect or affection, that love is a bill to be paid, they've already stripped away your dignity. Real love shows up. Real love stands beside you during your weakest hour without asking for compensation. In healthy relationships, generosity is not weaponized. Empathy is not conditional. Emma's journey teaches us that we must first honor our own worth before expecting anyone else to. We must listen to the discomfort in our bones when we are asked to settle for less than human decency. And when the time comes to walk away, it is not an act of failure. It is the greatest act of self-respect. No one should have to fight for the right to feel safe, supported, or seen in their own home. And if you find yourself doing the emotional math more often than sharing emotional connection, it might be time to reevaluate the cost of staying. And now, a quick question for you. If you were in Emma's shoes, would you A, stay and keep trying to make it work for the sake of the child? B, leave and fight for custody and peace, even if it meant doing it alone? Comment your answer below with A or B, and let us know why you chose that. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you do differently? What part of Emma's story resonated most with you? Drop your opinions in the comment section so others can read and reflect too. Your voice might help someone going through the same thing feel less alone. And if this story moved you, if it made you angry, inspired, or thoughtful, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue telling raw, powerful stories that need to be heard. See you in the next chapter.